Sweet. So another amazing session with Brandon Charleson. You know what, dude? I, of course, am super excited to talk to you. Always one of my undoubtedly favorite people in the lead gen space. Obviously, if anyone that knows you already knows, but I would say one of the most genuine, humble, hardworking, and just like all around solid dudes that I know, especially in this space that can be fairly fickle. So, dude, love chatting with you always. Today,
Thanks, bro.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, I couldn't be any more genuine about that, dude, like, from the bottom of my heart. So, let's just BS today. I wanna talk about what everyone is really interested in. Um, the usual stuff. What are the trends? What are we seeing? But you are such a master of using MCPs. I think that you helped instantly deploy theirs. I
Yep.
see the nice little special plaque in the background. And you're probably utilizing it to do anything and everything for yourself and for your clients nowadays. So let's kick it off there. Let's break it down really simply. Help people understand in all of this hubbub, what the difference is between an MCP and, things people were using 6 months or a year ago.
Right. Perfect. I mean, really, MCP is, even though it's new, it's not really new tech. I mean, it's really a wrapper around API calls, which a lot of us know, with the tech that we use, like Clay and anything that we do data wise, right? But I think it's a really important movement that I think Anthropic dropped, obviously November of last year, and it's finally starting to go a lot more wide, especially with all of the software, even SaaS is, I think we're going back to the chatbot, the simple chatbot. And the chatbot is only as good as the tools that it allows to use, right? MCP is that solution because a lot of APIs are all, even though they could be REST APIs, there's a lot of different endpoints and requirements, from a payload and authentication perspective. And MCP is finally, I think, getting to a point where it's actually usable in business use cases. And because there was a lot of technicalities to it, especially when it first came out, there was a learning curve and not even LLMs knew what the hell MCP was. I asked an AI, I'm like, do you know what, even Claude, do you know what MCP is? And it's like multi-channel personalization or some shit like that. I'm like, no, this is what it is.
Right.
And so even building MCP client or building MCP servers it's been taken off, right? There's a lot of leaders in the space when it comes like Firecrawl. There's a lot of really early adopters. And I think it's finally going more widespread, go viral, where I think there are some things that we need to be aware of, similar to how people are getting taken advantage of for spam and shit, right? I mean, that spam lightly hearted, but to fall victim when you may not even know it's happening, like prompt injection, stuff like that. So just stuff like that. There's prompt engineering, but now there's context engineering. And I think it's more important than ever just to be aware of that, to know how to use it, right? So, yeah.
So let me ask you this. Tell me if this is a fair enough summary, right? So for most people, they'll know first there was the LLM, right? There was OpenAI and all of those things. Then there was kind of agentic AI. So you would have this like one little hub and you'd say, hey, go search the web and bring back this. Go talk to this tool and bring back this. And go do this,
Yep.
bring back this. It would bring all of those pieces of data back. But because they are all kind of different languages, you would need to interpret it to be a common language. So that was like on you. And
Hmm.
now MCPs are generally like you can do the same thing, but it knows how to navigate and convert all of that information for itself to some degree. Would that
Hmm.
be a fair way of saying it? So you had agentic AI. This is kind of the next level where it's starting to figure it out and make the actions and take the actions and call the
Yep.
APIs and understand everything on its own, correct?
Yep. It's the next level up because everything's a workflow, and it's a workflow of take this data and do this next, et cetera, et cetera. But now we're pulling in external tools. No, use this tool for this, use this tool for that. Same thing, but you're
Yep.
just pulling in more level, more stuff, so
Yep.
higher level stuff. Yeah.
So let's talk about like what are use cases that you can use an MCP for that you're using it for, that you think the average person can use it for, and then how
Hmm.
companies like instantly have integrated MCPs into their workflows.
Yep. I would say, well, The first thing is you can assume that there's virtually probably now an MCP for nearly everything, especially if it's popular. A lot of it is around CRM because there's obviously like HubSpot and Salesforce. There's a lot of MCPs that are going around big SaaS, being able to make it easier to do CRUD actions like create, update, delete, that kind of stuff. And, it's actually it's empowering and easy, but with that kind of stuff, you can start to mess things up. So I would say the best use cases is still to live in that experimental area where it's not quite your CRM unless it's very defined on what you want to do. Like really, I would say analytics wise to know like what is the rapport or what do things look at as far as like campaigns or what is the status of a particular lead in your HubSpot or whatever. But the biggest ones is around building systems and web scraping. So Firecrawl is huge. Their MCP is, I mean, I use it every day. They're on fire, on the things that they're releasing pretty much every day, every week. But Firecrawl around web scraping, it just makes it super easy to be like, go to this website and tell me what it is. It's more effective than like a web search because your hit rate it's the site, just similar to Claygent, for example. I would say Supabase is a really good one too, because not only can it query, but it could help you basically output the schema of what it recommends and do relational database and stuff like that. So building systems, especially with like Cursor, Windsurf, that kind of thing, MCP definitely is a new unlock because you're giving the world, you're connecting the world with what you envision as an idea. I would also say browser MCP, which is browser automation. So there's a big hype around like, oh, try, Manus, try ChatGPT agent now, which was operator, right? But those are, in my opinion, they're really cool toys. It's consumer grade, it's experimental still for real business use and automation of like boring shit that we do like at scale. It's just a lot easier to automate those kinds of things, with something that is a lot more, like I said, inside cursors, things like that. So yeah, does that answer your question? So web scraping, CRM, and browser automation, really.
Are you using it for anything so we're using MCPs to kind of peer into call conversations, call logs, help our company understand where we can improve, what things we like agreed to on client calls better than we were doing previously, because it just seems to be a little bit more
Yep.
thoughtful. I don't know. Have you seen any use cases around that type of thing?
Yep. So for like sales calls, for example, you can use an MCP to pull in like scripts for, say, you had a vector database, which is obviously for RAG, but you can pull and query certain context around it and then write it to another knowledge base or do more. It's almost like having your sales QC person to improve your sales process, right? So stuff like that, I would say, is a good use case.
Are you doing this stuff for many of your clients?
Yeah, so we're constantly getting new builds. Sorry, my stuff is blowing up. I need to. When I talk with clients and stuff, obviously there's the traditional systems of building out their landing pages, their go to market, all that kind of stuff. But then it's more, I mean, call it like it is, but like more rev ops, like sustainment and full funnel conversion tracking. When someone does go to a landing page and they sign up for a free trial, what's next? It's beyond the cold email. You know what I mean? And so we're using MCP a lot more where, okay, if we get a certain trial, we'll do the sales intelligence streamline. We'll try to see how many people of that team signed up. And then we'll use MCP around that agent and then to be able to respond back to the team of what kind of data we're getting. You know what I mean? So it's a lot more back and forth and things getting done on your behalf. So clients are more interested on that for sure. And then even clients that we work with, like instantly, for example, just introducing more MCP actions on a very minor level.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the whole instantly engagement and what you helped them understand.
Yeah. So with Instantly, they're wonderful. They're great partners. Been working with them for a while now. Really, it's, everybody's trying to lead the pack on MCP and using AI in the best way, especially when it raises your top line. And so I do a lot of their automations around, especially N8N, where we get just has to come from ideas of, how can we streamline operations? It could be the sales intelligence process, could be customer ticketing, could be alerts around just a number of different signals within the organization. So every day we're getting a new idea, and it's just a matter of triggers and actions, and if AI or even MCP is the right use case for that, right? So it's still in that area of reliability. And so, yeah, when I just out of necessity of just for me being able to query Claude, for example, I built their MCP, which is still, we're actually deploying it to remote now because it is a lot easier just to, deploy it versus, bringing it to your machine and adding all the JSON. But just as simple back to the user, like, hey, what is the status of my campaigns, right? And Copilot does that too. But, if you have Claude right on your machine, it's just that much easier.
That's awesome. Yeah. That ability to just kind of query and free form questions is really great. Have you replaced
Mhm.
Claygent in any use cases by using MCPs?
Claygent inside Clay.
Yeah, like, are you using it? Well, like, just is there any use cases? Maybe not replace Claygent. I don't want Clay to get
Yeah.
all. upset. Is there any specific use cases that you use MCPs in Clay?
No, I mean, I wouldn't we haven't replaced Claygent because Claygent's just such a powerhouse, but they just added their MCP ability, right? And there's
Oh,
that
did they?
there is yeah, it's in beta still. I don't know if you have but they have MCP on Claygent now. And I really think it's a good move, but if you think about it, MCP automates a lot of steps already. So you could say, find this, do that, A, B, C, D, whatever. Whereas Clay is, or even N8N is, you start with a trigger and you go sequential from there. And it's just really interesting because with Claygen, you don't want to overcomplicate things. Why build an MCP or why have it bring an MCP? It's over engineering in a lot of cases, and we use Clay to sprint, like, web scrape this, give me this. What's the next action there? Sometimes it's not even necessary to really do MCP within that. So I've yet to do that. That's more for us like an end scenario because it's evergreen. I can do better tracking of error handling to debug and make sure that it's, operational and stuff like that. Whereas Clay, they're just not there when it comes to error handling and making sure if you're building a system, like, is it working? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that. What's the craziest thing that you're using an MCP for, and what's like the best thing that you use?
I mean, simple as it is gaining context around recent documents, which is context 7. That's a good one, just because it tracks the latest documents. And MCP is actually legit because it tracks their entire API, tracks docs, and then it can, you see all these.
Track
Uh,
docs. What do you mean track docs? Like, so what in N8N's case? What does that mean?
Well, just if something comes out like yesterday,
Hmm.
more importantly, it's going to be updated more than likely. So it
Yep.
allows you, when you have an idea, instead of querying docs or scraping, it'll pull the docs there. So anything that was newly released. So
Nice.
Context 7 is a good one. There's a lot of them now that are pulling that. Even grep, which is from Vercel, I think. Grep released their MCP server. So this is really powerful, but it's not always the best because you don't know exactly what it's pulling, if it's quality code or quality, context around what you're getting. So you still want to have like your idea in mind. And so it's specific to building things, but like grep is a really good one just to see like what's out there. And then really browser MCP, I run a cluster of Mac minis and it's nice to see on a monitor, like, click this and do this. And then you to test like repetitive shit. You know what I mean? Like, cause that's boring. So yeah.
Dude, how do you keep up? Like, I remember, like, beginning, like, I was, like, the first year, I was like, "Dude, I'm on it, I'm on it, I'm on it." Once it got to, like, like, reg training and databases, cool, good. That was, like, 2 years ago now. Like, within the next
Yeah.
year, I was like, keep it, like, now I mean, dude, how does anyone how does someone now get caught up and actually be up to date? What should we follow? What should we read? Who should we just give any insights on that, or just like continue to drink from a fire hose?
Yeah, it's the FOMO's real, man. I mean, you feel behind and you'll just keep feeling behind. But then when you build something and you look behind you, you're just like, whoa, okay, like you're actually pretty high up there. We're already living in that space already. So, dude, it's real, man. I feel like shit. Like now I got to learn this. Now I got to learn that. Like, what the hell, dude?
Is there anything that
Uh,
any like newsletters that are dank that summarize things? Any Twitter people that you're like, okay, at least I can get like some little snippets on a day-to-day basis?
yeah, absolutely. The makers themselves, I track the shit out of them
Yeah.
because when they drop something, it's like, yep, like let's go look at that. And then of course, but when they have like OpenAI, for example, when they release GPT-5, everybody's like, ooh and ah, but I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For business or for us. Greg Eisenberg is legit. He's a good dude. He posts some good content, just real stuff. And I mean, just I follow there's a shit ton, but really X is like raw. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's not
Yeah.
a lot of fluff on LinkedIn, on X. So it's just like, here's what it is. Here's what I found. And freaking GitHub, man, GitHub is a candy store. So just look at, high ranked stuff or high star stuff and, clone it, fork it, and then ask in your IDE, like, what is this about? Like, what is the stack here? Try to make a contribution, you know, see what you can do to improve it, use AI for that. And you just kind of, some people, when they vibe code, I would say this when you vibe code, try to let it run its course, but also read the fine print of like the language and what it's doing to debug and troubleshoot. Because I think that helps because you're going to learn new terminologies and it's going to spit that back at you. You just sharpen your skills there. You know what I mean? I don't know. I
So
watch
that's
videos
cool.
that are freaking like 6 to 8 months ago and I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Like that's easy now. You know what I
I
mean?
finally get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What can someone who's like really just starting go do? Like, is there some, like you said, like browser MCP? Like, is there some tool like they're like, oh, this is the most easy for someone to use and start to like their hands on how to utilize this? Is there anything that you'd recommend?
Well, they got to download. I would say just freaking download Cursor. Number one, you just got to open up an IDE. Like I talked to a couple guys from our group, and I'm like, dude, just download it and just start talking to it. Like you're just gonna have to dive in and just make sense of it all. But even to just understanding like an empty folder and then it writes files to even conceptualize that the fact that something like Cursor is a bit better and more powerful than Claude or ChatGPT because, not only can you can talk to it, but it actually writes code like Python and JavaScript, obviously. It'll execute it, but just make something so basic and simple and just see what you can do. And if you can even do that and then run on localhost, I think you're going to see like, oh shit, like I just created something. And then when you get browser MCP, it's simple to set up, but even ask it like, how do I set this up? It's a Chrome extension. And then you'll see mouse clicks, you'll see the typing, and you can just start to, put things together. And before you know it, you're exponentially just learning a lot more every day. That's what I would say. You just got to dive in. You just have to. I did that while deployed. And I'm like, well, there's either gym, sleep, or work. And I'm like, I'm not going to stare at a wall. It's boring as shit out there,
Looks like
So
you
I'm
got the
like, I'm
gym
just going
taken care of. You're probably good on that one, which
but
is
I'm
awesome
like,
because we're going to be at Sculpt here soon in a couple weeks, and we can finally get that arm wrestling competition you agreed to have with me out of the way.
arm wrestle. Let's
I've been
go,
looking
dude. Yeah.
forward to beating you in an arm wrestling competition for ages.
You too, bro.
That's good advice. So Cursor, that's like the main starting point for anyone that wants to start throwing themselves in, and that is it. Just chuck yourselves in. Man, I'll think of what I read, and I basically get a newsletter that kind of gives me all of the weekly rundown, and that helps keep me this much relevant and understanding everything, but like nowhere
Yes.
near where you are. So,
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
awesome advice, man. Very much appreciated as always. We're going to go into the live session and chat through a lot of this stuff again. But, I love chatting with you, man. So thank you for coming on and looking forward to the live session here shortly. Cool.
Yep. Sounds good, man.
All right. Cheers, brother.